let's dive into some of the storylines that are starting to unfold at what's going to become this offseason, more so on an internal standpoint, right? Obviously, I think we've talked at nauseum over the last couple of shows about the ideas of guys like Juan Soto, the return of Cody Bellinger. Well, we can make it official. Cody Bellinger over the weekend opted out of his deal. It was a mutual option, so both sides would have had to opt in. Bellinger certainly said no because he just came off of an incredible season. He probably has a good shot at winning one of the Silver Slugger Awards, and we'll know more about that on Thursday night because he's up for it in two positions. He's the utility and as well as outfield. So I mean, he had that kind of season where he's going to warrant a big contract, and it's a weak positional group. So I think we all expected that. We talked about it as if we knew he was going to become a free agent. Even if he does return to the Cubs, he's going to hit the market first. Marcus Stroman, though, probably the more interesting name of the two, opted out of his third year. He was due $21 million. It was a player option if he decided to pick it up. He did not. And as a result, is now a free agent. And Juice, I saw something today that was super interesting, and it was more related to the discussion surrounding Yamamoto and just like what he might draw in, because he was officially posted, I believe, today. You know, what he might get, because they were referring to the Tanaka contract. He got 155 over 7 at that time. Obviously, Tanaka was, quite a few years ago. That might be the starting number for Yamamoto right now at this point in time. But what I thought was interesting about it, Juice, is it made me think about it because they said this is an inflated market, right? There's not a lot of a lot of position players on this free agency class. It's a heavy pitching free agent market. So I think a lot of these pitchers kind of looked at this season and were like, if teams really want to go spend money, it's going to have to be on the pitching front, because if you miss on Ohtani, if you miss on Bellinger, and Rhys Hoskins potentially goes back to Philadelphia, there's really not a lot of elite bats out there for teams to add via free agency. So if they're going to make a big splash in the free agent market, it's going to be in the pitching market. What do you think? Do you think Marcus Stroman sees it that way? Why do you think he ultimately opted out of his player option for $21 million this year?
I think, too, you got to look at the Marcus Stroman, the person, too. I think he's the type of guy who doesn't like to stay in one area per se either. He's been on a lot of different teams. He's kind of went around. He had his stint in New York. He had his stint in Chicago and Toronto. And I'm not going to say that I think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a locker room cancer. I don't think any of those things. I think you saw his best version of himself in Chicago. I know the New York thing, there was a lot of, back and forth with the media, some problems with, him in the clubhouse and how all that thing ended. But I don't think there's any ill will on either side of it. I just think, Stroman too, at least I think he's getting 20-some million. And this is the other thing too. He has the option to build in, escalators or opt-outs or things of that nature that he can double dip on the market. Maybe he gets 20 million somewhere else in a better park for him. Something that's a little bigger.
Sure.
And he can go out and reset his market again after having a healthy season next year. I think if you're looking from the standpoint of Marcus Stroman, I think the Cubs probably come out better in this deal. And it's not that I don't like Marcus Stroman at all. It's just if you look at what's out there and you look at where they're at and what Marcus Stroman kind of hinted that he wanted, I don't know. I think you can grab a better pitcher on this market for the money that he was requesting, as early as July. So I sit here and I'm like, yeah, you might as well throw your name in the hat. And in a market, like you said, that's very limited on hitting, why not? There's going to be some big players with, a lot of needs for pitching. You look, in Boston, you look at the Cardinals, you look, even the Cubs. The Cubs need pitching. It's not out of the realm that he comes back to the Cubs. Everybody always needs pitching. The Dodgers would use it too.
Sure.
The Padres, if they feel like, they want to, take out another loan, or I don't know, the Giants as well. Like there's a lot of big market teams that are going to be in the market for pitching, and not all of them are going to have Ohtani on the roster, or, Nola, or, a Jordan Montgomery at the end of this whole thing. It's going to be one of those things that Stroman maybe finds the miss at the table and goes, all right, I want a 27 AVV deal. Let's say I want 27 million. And then you look and he's making more money than he was supposed to opt into, and he looks like the smart one in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of moving pieces here that certainly equate into his move, and I don't think it's super surprising by any stretch of imagination that he did opt out. Because again, I think that 21 million was built in as a failsafe, more so to say if you have two really bad years in Chicago and people don't think you're going to get that on the market, you have that safety blanket. But if he's willing to bet on himself, I think at worst case scenario, he's getting that 21 million, right? I think that's the bottom tier of what he's getting, just because, again, like you said, Juice, I think you put it perfectly. Everybody needs pitching. And I think we saw that, this year with the Cubs in 2023, especially once Marcus Stroman got hurt and, they didn't have that second, dare I say, workhorse type arm in the rotation on a day-to-day basis. It really ended up impacting the team.
Yeah, and two, he's going to have the argument in his back pocket of, until I got hurt, I was in the Cy Young race.
Sure. Yeah.
It's one of those things that he can plop onto the table and go, listen, my year wasn't fully together, but I pieced two halves of Cy Young level pitching. If you look at the second half of the year before last year and the first half of this year, that's Cy Young numbers. And that's what his agent, and that's what he'll point to, and he'll say, this is the capability that I have, and you need pitching, and let's just make a deal.
100%. And again, a guy that I think we've talked about quite a bit here at Cubs on Tap, a guy that is expected to age well too. So I don't think anybody's going to be as, alarmed by his age as some of these other pitchers on the market potentially. And let's be honest. I don't think teams really give a shit. As long as you're a good pitcher, teams are willing to throw money at you and they'll deal with the consequences of that later. It's just tale as old as time, really, when it comes to baseball free agency.